Yes, we can see your screen.
So someone, perfect, great. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time to hear an update about the Somali Rill and what we've been up to over the past year. My name is Nishant, and together with my colleague Abdi, we oversee the Rill platform in Somalia. We are hosted by the SOMREP Consortium, which is led by World Vision, and we are generously funded by USAID, DFAT, CEDA, SVC, co-funded by EU, and also Global Giving. So let's begin with a reflection over the year of what we've been up to and share some key highlights. So the first is around our ecosystem mapping tools. Now, with the conclusion of our first project, which was a USAID or OFTA-funded RISE project, we were able to collect valuable data and create a few tools around the Somali innovation ecosystem and startups. The first was a directory that amalgamated all the publicly available data and merged it with the UNTW map. We designed this tool to be very simple and easy to navigate, and even formatted it for mobile viewing, allowing for people to easily understand and connect with different people in this space. This tool design has also now been adapted by other labs and other colleagues, which we're excited about. We also created an in-depth relationship mapping with in-depth data, and it provided some great insights to, for example, who is connected with what actor, events, funders, and products. We used a data visualization software called Kumu, which organized and mapped some 1,500 actors and some 4,000 connections. And then lastly, all of these tools were a first of its kind in Somalia, but we wanted to get these insights on a global platform. And so we partnered with a global ecosystem ranking platform called Startup Link. Mapped some 200 plus countries around the world, some over 500 cities. They had never included a place like Somalia, but with our data being fed into their algorithm, not only did Somalia debut, it debuted in the top 100 most innovative countries for startups, ranking at 95th, which only the first 100 countries are ranked. So this, of course, shocked many people, and it's drawn some great positive attention. We even got a quote from the Minister of Planning and Economic Investment and Economic Development to commemorate this event. And it's helped to add to the narrative of Somalia that although there are challenges, it is also a place of great opportunity. Another key highlight was our private sector macro engagement. We've had the pleasure to support a few different locally driven events, including the Mogadishu Tech Summit. And last year, this event had some 4,000 participants. But we've also been able to participate at some international events. Last year, we were asked, or earlier this year, we were asked to host a panel on Somalia at the Sandkelp Forum. This is back in February. We were given the largest panel platform during this event. And we use this to show how people are overcoming challenges in Somalia to innovate, to form partnerships, to have a positive impact, and also to make money. This has resulted in the Sandkelp organizers, IntelliCap, who are one of India's largest social impact investors and expanding in places like Africa, to include Somalia now in an investing landscaping study together with IDRC, seeing Somalia as a frontier economy. And they've also partnered with us to do a series of webinars, and we've completed one already, focused solely on Somalia. And the goal is to do an in-person event next year, hopefully. We were also asked to present at the first ever Global Ecosystem Summit hosted by Startup Link. And during this time, Somalia was actually voted as the most intriguing and surprising ecosystem, and people wanted to learn more. So we've been really privileged that through our research and our work, we've been able to help bring some positive attention to Somalia at a global level, and this has piqued the interest of a few donors and investors. Going to our Matchmaker platform, we've now successfully completed 7 solution packs, and these have been challenges that have been submitted from a wide range of actors, from local and international NGOs, UN agencies and clusters, and even the private sector. So far, we have supported 17, or we are supporting 17 pilots, and these are all at various stages, and they're all in very different sectors. And what's kind of been neat about these partnerships is that it has actually helped to form, with at least even our host entity, some new partnerships. An example of this is Ogo EMR, which is a local startup, and their funder, the Gates Foundation, were able to form a partnership with World Vision Somalia. That's the first in Somalia to have a partnership connected to Gates. It's also helped to bring in new funding. An example of that with our host entity is that we had done a convene with the WA cluster and got a few challenges, but it wasn't able to go anywhere. And so World Vision decided to take ownership of that. And we helped them to apply for Grand Challenges Canada funding, and they were successful in that, winning $250,000. And then lastly, let me talk a bit about our COVID-19 response. With COVID-19 spreading around the world, we mobilized our network very quickly to develop some public health tools. And we used a co-creation process to develop this information, get priorities, get technical input, and we made all of the content free and open source. This scaled very quickly across the region. And this fast approach, an example of this is we had 3 videos in wide circulation in the Somali language across the region before the UN called together the RCCE, or the Risk Communication and Community Engagement Task Force, and before the government had their own COVID-19 response plan. As a result of this work, we have been privileged to win 3 awards this year, and just this past week, one of our local partners was actually nominated for an award also. We were also asked to present at the Global Digital Development Forum, taking our experiences and sharing how we were able to mobilize and move quickly and form partnerships quickly in Somalia and showcase that at a global platform. Next is what we've done is what we realized is that we took our approach in Somalia and we actually turned it into a model to support the creation, the rapid creation and scaling of public health tools for any crisis. We call this model ARM, or Adaptive Response Messaging. And it's been exciting because we've been also asked by some actors in Yemen to help them replicate this approach. And then lastly, another highlight that I want to talk about is when we were developing these messages, what we realized that the message is only good if people have access and the ability to act upon it. So one example of some of the initiatives that we've been supporting in this space is a product called Surprise Soap. This was a product that was piloted by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and Save the Children in Iraq. We have successfully worked with those original pilot partners to bring this into Somalia together with the SOMREP and funding through DFAT to do a rapid deployment of this. We've also worked to identify a local soap manufacturing company and to work to support their capacity for general soap production, but the idea is to then help them to locally produce this product, and thus it would bring the whole COVID response into the economic recovery phase. So let me hand it over to my colleague Abdi, who will talk about a few of the challenges that we faced.
So thank you, Nishan. In supporting innovation in Somalia, if you can go down, add some more, so that the challenge will be right. Thanks. So in supporting innovation in Somalia has seen much success, but there are still numerous challenges that we face. The first is the lack of funding for early stage innovation to get the proof of concept. In a grant-funded context, NGOs really have flexible farms, and innovation donors are often looking for a proof of concept before they consider funding. So this is a great, real gap in the funding market. Secondly, COVID-19 disrupted travel and the ease of movement. But even pre-COVID, insecurity makes it costly and complicated to travel. Thirdly, many local actors, especially innovators, are desperately seeking opportunities to grow their capacity through this can be through skills training and also access of resources in terms of investments or grants. And then there are the resources to move innovations forward. Although we can support them, apply for funding, and make connections, we are limited in what we can provide. And finally, geography takes much longer due to the numerous steps and people involved. This lag time can disrupt momentum, which is not ideal for the innovation space. So with those few challenges, I'd like to hand it over back to September 2022.
Great, thank you. So we're excited about this upcoming year. And so we've been working with a few, Erin's on the call right now. So we've had conversations with her and many others in different support offices too around this. And so we'd like to be able to see that finalized, and that then being able to be shared widely with our support offices once we've done designing it. And we've also been courting the private sector and donors as we try to encourage nexus funding for innovation, trying to merge grants and investments. And so we'd like to see this concept, take hold and mature over the next year. Next, we would like, over this past 2 years that our lab's been around, we've worked well with many different local actors, especially as we've been trying to find our footing and value add to Somalia. I think we're now at a stage where we know what we can offer, but also what we need. And so we'd like to formalize some of these relationships with local actors moving forward. Next, we have seen a significant value of our mapping tools, and it's positioned us to support the wider ecosystem in Somalia. So we'd like to explore ways that we can continue to update and improve these tools and these resources. And then lastly, we have seen that Somalia has much to share with the wider region. And through these interactions, we've been able to scale our influence beyond Somalia. An example of that is the ARM model in expanding into Yemen, but also it's also benefited us in Somalia. And an example of that would be Surprise Soap coming in from Iraq, or the digital attendance app, which is another pilot that we've been supporting coming in from Kenya. So those are a few of our objectives. Let me hand it back to Abdi to talk about needs.
Thank you, Nishant. If you can go quickly to the needs slide. Thank you. So in order to successfully pursue our ambitious objectives over the next year, we need, above all, the ongoing support from the Central Support Unit. We have found their technical input and connections to pursue finding very instrumental. Secondly, we also need the ongoing support of a host entity. And in this case, Somali Resilience Program under World Vision Somalia program. They've fundraised and built us into proposals and given us the flexibility to experiment. The COVID-19 response is a great example of senior leadership strongly backing us with the necessary approvals for first sourcing of procurements to advocating to donors to allocate the program funds to help scale initiatives we were rapidly supporting. Thirdly, we also need more support. We need more support from the support officers to help advocate for the value of what the real has to offer. And finally, this can help us address the funding gaps we've identified for a proof of concept. Also, a lot of what we do is also process innovation, and this can be hard to find funds for. With those few needs to September 2022, I'd like to hand it back to Nishant.
Great, thank you, Abdi, and thank you all for your interest and time. We now have some time for Q&A.
Just one added point why the questions start coming in is one note on the Yemen is that it is activities that are going on with all three of our founding partners, with Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision, World Vision being the lead behind that. So it is one of our first entirely global founding partners, collaborations outside of the RIL itself. Any questions for Nishant and Abdi?
So maybe just a comment and maybe a question in terms of RIL in Somalia, but also in general. Thank you very much, first of all, for the presentation. It was really interesting. I work in Save the Children Denmark, and we support a lot of activities and have a lot of very close collaboration with our colleagues in the country office of Save the Children there. I was just wondering if there has been some attempt in working with education and innovation in terms of children and youth innovators, and we did some work on that as well. But I'm just whether that could be part of an integral part of education somehow to learn about more entrepreneurial side of things and innovation in general. I don't know if there's been some activities. I'm just asking you because I'm aware that there are so many, and just looking at the ecosystem mapping, you know, there must be a lot of things ongoing there. But it seemed like that it would be a natural way to, you know, to somewhat take that next step in terms of participation and engagement of the younger generations as well. Just maybe your thoughts around that sort of segment of the population.
Great, thank you, Alice, and nice to virtually meet you.
Yeah.
Actually, yes, later on this week, actually, I'm talking to a few of your colleagues and a few people in Somalia around an education pilot, a little bit different. This is around an education monitoring system. But in particular, talking about engaging youth, as you've rightly pointed out, the Somali ecosystem is quite diverse, and there are a lot of local innovation hubs targeting youth. And youth, I would use the broad term of people under 30 in particular. And so for us, our context is a bit different. Unlike our counterparts in other countries, we don't have a physical space and a co-working space in a lab because we felt that that wasn't the need, what was needed. We have a different value add. And so what we've done is we've actually worked to support some of those local innovation hubs that already are there. And so an example of that would be iRise, which is a Mogadishu-based innovation hub that has a co-working space and doing a bunch of stuff there with young people that we've supported them with. And they organize the Mogadishu Tech Summit, so we've helped them with that. Another one is Shakadon, which is a local NGO that set up the Har Hub in Hargeisa, and we've supported them. There's another one in Puntland, and now we're actively pursuing relationships with some academic partners that are also exploring the innovation space there too. And so what we felt is they are better placed as a local entity to be directly engaging with youth. And so again, we felt that what they do lack though is some of that technical capacity, know-how, and that global network. So an example is last year. I didn't include it this year because it happened just before last year, so it doesn't fit within our our annual review. But we supported a university called CIMAD University, and they, for the first time, hosted an event called the Global Goals Jam, which is a global UNDP-backed innovation hackathon design thinking event. It happened in 70 cities around the world simultaneously, and they wanted to bring it into Somalia. Yet they didn't really have the capacity or the skills to facilitate it, or they've had very theoretical challenges that they were looking at. And so we helped source a real world problem, bringing a problem and a challenge from the CASH consortium, and gave that for them to wrestle with. And then we also helped to facilitate that event for them. And so that's where we really see the value add, is supporting these local entities to be the face and working behind them.
Thank you a lot. That sounds very interesting. Great way, great approach.
And if I can add to that, 'cause I think that's a question that comes up often at the global level. I mean, we do see there's a lot of local and international entities that are really focused on directly, training and educating, capacity building with youth or vulnerable populations in particular. And I think one of the best things we can do, because we don't necessarily have the ability to reach out to all those communities, but certainly if we can find a way to help scale the innovations that are coming out of these other projects, I think that it is that pathway to scale, and I think that's going to inspire and encourage much more of that to happen, because I think we've all seen that there's that gap between the sort of hyper local level and the sort of national and global level about scaling, things that are early stage, that have just gotten a little past proof of concept, but haven't quite generated enough evidence to be taken up by the kind of organization that needs evidence to scale. So I think if we're able to do that and to link to these entities, I think that's a great way for us to contribute to other organizations' work by giving that pathway to scale from the local to the national and maybe the global.
Yeah. Great, thanks.
Other questions for Nishant and Abdi?
Yes, I had a very basic question, maybe to say, but we're starting with a general mapping of entities. But then we're thinking to make not a sectorial mapping, but a challenge. We have a challenge, and with that challenge. And my question is, I'm just hearing, and I think that the mapping never stops. You all the time are mapping actors, and I know it's a very basic question, but maybe you are wondering that. But in the practice, I believe, because the thing that are talking, that you never stop mapping. So it's a very basic question, but we are here to learn. So I want to know here.
Hey, it's good to speak again. Yes, it can be a never-ending exercise. And I think that's one of the things that we've learned, and we've had to wrestle with and find a balance. So we were very fortunate when our lab started that we had funding and an academic partner to do it. And even though we mapped 1,500 actors and did 4,000 connections, even once we collected that data, kept digging into the data and making more connections, and we just had to say, okay, you know what? We need to stop now because we have to produce a report and share this information. And so, and I think in a lot of ecosystems, especially in Somalia, what we see is a lot of vegetation to still capture. We haven't figured it all out. What we've seen is that at least the mapping tools, we put it together at some point and it gives us a snapshot. And then we have to go back and update it on some sort of a frequent basis. But you're right, that can be an exercise that always continues, and it requires resources to do.
If I can jump in, Nishan, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, we just finished the data and we wanted to put it on a global platform before it became out of date. But that's something that we'll have to revisit for this upcoming year, is how do we make sure that that information is still up to date?
Yeah, and I was going to jump in to say, I think that was one of the things we worked at, all the labs worked at this year, was to sort of other side. We also we formatted the information management system so that mapping would be a lot easier. So for instance, we did this workshop in South Sudan over the past 2 months, and we were capturing information about the ecosystem. We now have our information systems structured in a way that we can export that directly into the directory map that Tom briefly showed. So that's made mapping a lot cheaper and faster. Literally, now we can do it if the data is formatted correctly in a regular day-to-day system. Then a map can really be done in a matter of days for very low cost. But that's a mistake we learned from initially our systems weren't built like that. So we had to invest a lot of time and resources in 2020 to sort of retro-engineer our systems to be fit for purpose. And I think it's great in Central America, you have the luxury of starting from scratch. So I think that's certainly a lesson we've learned, to organize a system so that you don't have to maintain completely different databases. If you can all do it with one, that saves you a lot of time going forward.
Max, maybe you can highlight a little bit about the MDI, the Migration Displacement Initiative with Save Children, and how they're engaging with both the Jordan and the Iraq labs and utilizing our database of connections and networks.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Emma. Yeah, this is ongoing. Actually, the meetings next month. The convener events will take place next month. I think this is something we're starting to be able to position very much as a kind of a gateway to entire ecosystems. So in the case of MDI is the Migration Displacement Initiative. It's an internal project of Children International to build a predictive analytics system for refugee programming. And they wanted to do some kind of field consultation with a number of actors who might be supplying information to such a system or might be using such a system in the future. And they really wanted a broad range of actors, from private sector to local NGOs, UN, and so on. And so we were able to essentially, contract to them to say, we can host, this is something that's relevant to us because it's about refugee programming, it's about innovation, and we can actually use the data set that we have to invite, to select the right organizations, to conduct a survey, to survey those organizations, and ultimately to have a virtual meeting to deliver, the consultation that they were looking for. So I hope this is kind of growth opportunity. We're capturing a lot of data. We are up to, I think, 2,500 organizations mapped through the different SLIME. SLIME is Systems for Lab Information Management and Evidence. We kind of wanted a catchy acronym, but that's what we use to capture information at the lab level and the global level. So it's quite awesome, and it's really, I think people are impressed with DFID recently, like not many people have this kind of resource, and it really helps everyone understand what these innovation ecosystems look like, who's which way they lead in terms of program areas, in terms of type of actors, and so that's something we can really capitalize on forward.
Max, I have a comment. This is
Please,
Ivan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I first of all, I would like to thank Nishan and the Response Innovation Lab in Somalia, because they are helping us in Central America imagine Somalia helping Central America to develop an innovation lab. That is amazing, and we like to thank Somalia and the innovation lab there because they are supporting us. We are just learning and we are starting. And today we have a launching opening ceremony in the afternoon to start our innovation lab in Central America. I was surprised because in Somalia they have just 1 year of operations, maybe no more than 2, but they are already have 3 awards. And I was wondering how intentional is Nishan and the people in Somalia to achieve these goals, because I know visibility is very important in an innovation lab at this moment, and also the resources. And that is why I see the connection between the awards and also the raising of funds in Somalia. Maybe Nishan, could you explain us how intentional you are in this purpose? Thank you very much.
Thanks. I think it underscores the whole, the whole ethos of the Innovation Lab is collaboration, right? At the global level, bringing these global members together. And I think we have been privileged with in an incredible host entity and the SOMREP and Kevin and Suen and others, Simon, who have been intentional with building us in, I think, into larger grants. And I think that has helped us. When I started in the role, we were very behind. We had a slow start before I came on board. And so we had a lot of challenges with trying to make sure we met deliverables. Yet I had a very supportive ecosystem and senior leadership who provided me with the resources that I needed. And so that helped me I wasn't focused on fundraising, I was focused on delivering. And I think that really helped us. Not to say that being in a large, we did share some challenges of being in a large bureaucracy that do come with challenges. And actually one of our pilot projects is actually to try and support and speed up and bring clarity to World Vision's supply chain process when it comes to innovation. Short of just sole sourcing and getting the national director to sign off on everything, which can burn bridges over time. So, but I think, yeah, it's seeing that innovation is integral to a larger programming. It has its place. Not necessarily an innovation pilot is not needed for every single project, but there are a lot of opportunities where it can be built in intentionally and provide funding and resources to address challenges that are found in the field. I feel a lot of the challenges that have come to us have been submitted by those who are implementing grants that are pretty rigid. And so they've planned a 2-year project. They've tried to they built out the budget, and then all of a sudden they face challenges. So they come to us to help them find solutions. We identify solutions and that they don't have the resources to implement those solutions. And so they're like, this is great, we'll build it into our next proposal next year. And so that provides significant challenges. And yet we're slowly now moving, after having, 1-2 years under our belt, trying to be more intentional ahead of time to say, how do we build this into projects ahead of time to give us that flexibility? And going back to that, a lot of what we do is process innovation. And that's part of knowing that we may not know what the challenge is right now, but if we can develop a framework that allows us to then pivot when those challenges arise down the line, then we can be more responsive and adapt and pivot quickly. So it's no simple, it's just constant awareness. It's a constant process of always, being aware and including people in the process, because at the end of the day, we all have to work together in order to support innovation. And we often know that, the Innovation Lab has its time and space. We're not going to solve everything, but there is a niche where we can make a significant impact.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. And congratulations on opening up your lab. So good luck and keep me posted.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Any more questions for Nishant and Abdi? We can also open it up at this time for just general feedback and reflection. We have about 10 minutes left of this call, of this meeting, before we move into the local lab management meeting. So if there's any reflections or highlights that the participants would like to share, please go ahead and do so.
Maybe just a small comment, just to compliment everybody for, I mean, it's really amazing what has been achieved in a very few years to build up all of this. And it's also really nice, I think, that it's not one shoe fits all, but that sort of the localized approach, the way of finding out where you add more value is incredibly important also in terms of sustainable action, to make sure that this can continue in some shape or form, doesn't have to be linked to international organizations. So, but it's like more, yeah. So I think it's very interesting to see all, and it was great to see all the presentations and to look at the different contexts, see what was relevant for real in those different contexts. So just thanks from here, some really great presentations and a good insight into your good job.
Thank you, Alice. If there's no other comments, I'd like to thank as well, to offer some thanks to everyone who participated here. I mean, we couldn't, I'm really glad we were able to open up our retreat, and I really hope that we'll see more of you, you know, at some other later conference.